The latest episode of Amazon's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, titled Doomed to Die, reveals the elven smith Celebrimbor's realization of Sauron's deception regarding the creation of the 9 Rings of Power for men. Trapped in a mental prison, Celebrimbor completed the rings he was initially reluctant to forge, aided by his obsession with looping distractions around him. It is only when he notices a mouse repeating its actions that he recognizes Anatar as Sauron, the Dark Lord. However, by this point, Sauron has already convinced Celebrimbor's followers that the smith has lost his sanity, leaving a region vulnerable to attack from Adar and his orc army. The fate of the 9 rings now hangs in the balance. Tolkien enthusiasts know that the 9 kings of men who receive these rings ultimately become the Ringwraiths, or Nazgul, as depicted in The Lord of the Rings. Yet, Rings of Power raises a significant question: how will men come to possess these powerful rings? Tolkien's insights into the 9 Rings of Power. In the prologue of Peter Jackson's film adaptation of The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, audiences receive a brief overview of the distribution of the rings. Each race of Middle-earth is characterized differently, with men noted for their desire for power, setting a tone of foreboding regarding their fate with the rings. The famous verse describes the rings' distribution: 9 for mortal men, doomed to die. This line is directly echoed in the title of Episode 7, suggesting a significant danger in bestowing such power upon men. In Tolkien's The Silmarillion, the history surrounding the 19 rings is explored in greater detail. The section of the Rings of Power and the Third Age explains how Sauron, disguised as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, manipulated the elves into crafting the rings. Upon realizing Sauron's true identity, the elves attempted to shield the rings from him, which led to war. This sequence of events serves as a backdrop to the Rings of Power series, though the show has rearranged certain plot points for dramatic effect. By the time the 9 rings are forged for men, the dwarves already possess their rings, contributing to the madness of Durin III, king of Khazad-dûm. According to Tolkien, Sauron distributed the 9 rings to various kingdoms, including Numenor. With only 1 episode left in the season, it seems unlikely that viewers will witness how the 9 rings are given to men or how these kings transition into the Nazgul. It's conceivable that showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay may reserve these pivotal moments for Season 3, although a glimpse into these events would certainly heighten the tension before the season concludes. Key questions raised by Episode 7. A pressing question arises from Episode 7 regarding how the 9 rings will eventually return to Sauron. Celebrimbor manages to slip the 9 rings to Galadriel just before Sauron is aware of their existence. Rather than fleeing Eregion, he seems destined to fall alongside his kingdom, consistent with Tolkien's canon. In Unfinished Tales of Numenor and Middle-earth, Celebrimbor's fate is described in greater depth. Under torture, he refuses to disclose the locations of the 3 elven rings but eventually succumbs to his injuries, with his body displayed as a trophy by Sauron. With the Season 2 finale approaching, it is likely that Celebrimbor's story will reach its conclusion. Given the character's impending demise in Tolkien's lore, it may not be feasible to bring back Charles Edwards for another season. This possibility is bittersweet, considering Edwards's compelling portrayal of the elven smith. Fans should prepare for a poignant ending for Celebrimbor, whose pride and ambition ultimately lead him to create the rings for Sauron. Once the rings fall into the hands of men, the narrative will continue to evolve. If the writers adhere to Tolkien's storyline, it's possible that Celebrimbor will betray Galadriel in his final moments, bringing her face to face with Sauron again. However, the show's creators seem intent on crafting a sympathetic arc for Celebrimbor, hinting at a potential twist in his ending. By the close of Episode 8, the 9 rings may well be in Sauron's possession, leading to an atmosphere of dread in Numenor as Pharazôn begins utilizing the Seeing Stone, possibly indicating his future as one of the Nazgul. Dramatic adaptations of Tolkien's work. As audiences have witnessed, adaptations of Tolkien's work often necessitate alterations for cinematic purposes. Peter Jackson's films made significant changes, which he defended in the behind-the-scenes documentaries released with the Lord of the Rings box sets. Conversely, the Hobbit trilogy faced criticism for its liberties with the source material. The pressures of tight timelines and production challenges may have contributed to the unevenness in the Hobbit films, leaving viewers divided. Despite the varying opinions surrounding adaptations, it is essential to recognize that Tolkien's works were historically deemed unfilmable. Jackson himself acknowledged the challenges of translating such intricate texts into film. With much of the material that Payne and McKay are adapting being unfinished or incomplete, they are tasked with constructing narratives from what could be perceived as mere outlines. While Tolkien's son, Christopher, voiced concerns that Jackson's films reduced his father's works to superficial action narratives, the adaptations have gained a dedicated following over the years. Perhaps Rings of Power will similarly find its place in the hearts of fans, proving to be an ambitious cinematic endeavor that continues to unfold.